The IoD has always been committed to good governance, and what we're doing with charities now is just an extrapolation of where we've been for 120 years nearly. It's about recognizing that any entity, be it a charity or a for-profit company, requires being run by directors, trustees, in a proper way, with due attention to process and to the proper stewardship of that entity's resources. It's not enough just to lend your name to a good cause. By doing that, you have a responsibility to make sure that it carries out its operations in a legal and properly governed manner. It's other people's money and needs to be looked after just as much as it would in the for-profit sector.
Well, the IoD has introduced the concept of the trustee training because we need to help charity directors, just like business directors, understand their responsibilities. One of the challenges for charity directors is to understand the risks that they face as directors. The good news is they're the same risks that they face as non-charity directors, and they're actually pretty sensible. In the charity sector, we are focused on public service and doing public good. And in the business sector, we're focused on profit, which may then go on to do public service and public good. And what I fear, a lot of charities have forgotten that, but where the two roles are absolutely the same are what you are supposed to do as a director. Directors have got to do three things. So make sure there's a strategy, make sure it's being implemented, make sure you behave. If someone starts out as a charity director, or actually as a director, don't assume that you know all the answers. Don't think that you're actually an executive when you're a non-executive, and don't think that you should be giving people instructions rather than being part of a group who help steer the charity towards delivering its objectives.
Shoring up public confidence has a lot to do with transparency, a lot about putting the public and the donor at the centre of charities' extraordinary works. We're happy to see many initiatives already underway, and we think that the IoD role of the trustee will only support those.
Gone are the days where it's just volunteers popping along to a board meeting, being a bit of a social event. Now I think trustees really have to understand the role and really have to understand the business that their charities are undertaking.
The best thing about today's programme was the opportunity to have a really good, in-depth, engaging conversation with Paul the tutor and loads of other really experienced charitable trustees. You know, how do you deal with those areas of grey and shade? That was really useful, really valuable.
Very rarely do I see a board that is so hopeless that it hasn't asked the right questions. Because what happens, though, is that the interpersonal dynamics, one way or another, mean that the answers aren't followed through. It's actually finding those interpersonal skills which mean that people behave in a proactive, in a decision-making, and a sort of decisive fashion, I think would overcome a lot of the issues that I certainly see in my day job.
I think charity trustees have to employ the best business practices because we need to deliver the very best outcomes. We are the social safety net of UK PLC. And I've sat in charity board meetings where the CEO of one of the UK's leading banks put up with a set of management accounts that simply did not add up. And I kind of nudged the chair and I went, the columns don't add up. And he went, oh yeah, but it's a charity, love, don't worry. So I think it's incumbent upon charity trustees to guard against the tipping point. When does the existence of the charity become more important than the passion and energy to change the world?
It's important for trustees to actually look at what's happening outside, to understand that the national landscape for charities is changing. So it's important for us to start telling stories, to start being really clear about what we're delivering, the impact that charities are having for the beneficiaries that we're all serving.
I would say the challenges that we do see in some of the trends is around setting the governance framework within a charity in the first place. So what is the role of the trustee versus the day-to-day executive management within a charity? And setting that boundary out and setting that framework out is the first challenge, and it's the most important, because that clearly sets out the role, responsibilities and accountabilities between the two.
And it's about how we work differently together. It's about improving collaboration. It's about people stepping away from the soapbox and actually working much more constructively and having constructive discussions.
I particularly liked the panel. I thought the panel was really excellent. We had really interesting speakers. We had people who had a great deal of experience and can really share with us some of the realities they've seen, some they've experienced themselves.
I think the panel has been fantastic, a really great spread of people, different experiences, the two charity chief executives, very forthright, but also to have the helpful corrective off the balance of what the regulator has to achieve, what Parliament requires of the regulator, and get people like that together and be able to hear the same perspectives at the same time.
This evening's event was hugely beneficial for me, for my organisation. It's hugely important that trustees embrace the regulations and the guidelines from the Charities Commission, and that they deliver and they're able to follow the guidance in the right way.
So Lesley-Ann, if culture is that combination of behaviour and values, in your experience, how do you deal with somebody on a board, a trustee or an executive, who's displaying bad behaviour or denial of values?
What I'm really interested in is how do we actually improve the trusteeship with those 16,000 charities who are actually very small.
It's that pipeline of supply. Who are we interesting to become trustees? Who are we encouraging? Who are we enabling to become trustees? For us at the Commission, we have a job of work to do to make the communication of the guidance more practical, more real, more instant.
It was a very good refresher around trustees' responsibilities, around corporate governance, delegation of authority and matters reserved to the board. It's a topic that in smaller charities I think probably has less focus, and made me think that that might be something that we need to give some attention to in our organisation.
You'll have loads and loads and loads of passionate people working for you or volunteering or being in the mix. It's up to the charity trustees to grab that ambition and hold it aloft as the shiny prize.
I think all too often charities simply explain in rather more generic terms what they get up to. So I think a degree more clarity, I think, will help the public understand more and be able to place the rest of it into context.
So there has to be some mechanism on the board of a charity or an entrepreneurial business that allows people to know why they're doing what they're doing. And I constantly cite in my commercial world John Kennedy's speech about getting to a man on the moon and back again safely by the end of the decade. Every man and woman on the space program knew that their reason to get up every day was to figure out ways to get the man on the moon and back again by the end of the decade. They never lost sight of that purpose. Many charities, many businesses lose sight of the purpose because they've moved into what Lesley-Ann described as that period of time when the existence of the charity becomes more important than the delivery of the services. So the moonshot is perhaps the message that I'd like to leave you with now. Thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you.